let's talk next, Ryan, about kind of the class view of like, what does this mean for the Notre Dame class? And for me, Micah checks a lot of boxes and from numbers, impact, Texas, a lot of different things.
We didn't even talk about the return ability too. I mean, he can all special teams pretty early on.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. And that'll be part of it as well. Number one, the corner need. Mm-hmm. So the need coming in was 2. We had talked early that they could get away with 1 because you had 3 in 2000. You had 3 players in 2000 in the 21 class. Mm-hmm. The fact is even though Clarence Lewis played as a freshman, it didn't count because it was the COVID year. And so he technically still has 3 years of eligibility remaining. We talked about this current freshman class, Ryan Barnes, Philip Riley, and Chance Tucker. They all redshirted. They're technically going to have 4 years left. And then, of course, you had an outstanding duo of Jaden Mickey and Benjamin Morrison. So you could get away with 1 in that class. Now, even if you could get away with it, 2 was the ideal number. You wanted to get to 2.
Yeah.
And so you obviously you had Justin Redd on the board early. He went off. You had to get 2. And the thing about it is they took a little bit of a risk because there was really only 3 corners left on the board, in the last couple months. And it was Micah Bell, Christian Gray, and Josiah Wagner. I mean, Caleb Presley wasn't super interested. They had kind of dropped some other guys that were on the board early. This was one where you're putting a lot of your eggs in the Micah Bell, Christian Gray bucket, basket. And of course, to get him, I thought getting him was obviously a big one. So numbers wise, 2 is good, but more important than numbers, you needed impact talent because you landed 5 guys who will enter the 22 season with 4 years of eligibility remaining. All 5 guys of the last 2 classes have 4 years left of eligibility. It wasn't so much the numbers. You needed to add impact talent. And that's the first area where he but we're not going to talk about him each because I think you can't talk about his impact talent without also talking about there was a need to continue improving the speed at the position. There's like long guys like Cam Hart who can actually run. Ryan Barnes, Philip Riley is physical. There's Jaden Mickey's quick and athletic and Benjamin Morrison's long and big. Some of these guys can run, but there was a need to start really trying to get when you can just a higher level of speed. So impact talent, speed, those are 2 big boxes that Micah Bell checks that were even more important than, to me, the 2. Because if you could get 2 and they're not impact potential talents, then I don't think you necessarily met your need in this class.
Well, the wide receiver position in college and the NFL just keeps getting faster and more populated. Like there's just so many wide receivers I feel like come out of college every single year because everybody wants to play wide receiver. And I think that has hurt kind of the development of defensive backs at times, right? Especially the cornerback position. And when you look at Micah Bell, I mean, not only does he have enough size to be a very good football player, but he also has that game-breaking speed. Like that's the difference for me. This kid from day one, even with imperfect technique, is going to be able to turn and run with just about anybody. Like you're not going to be able to really throw it over his head. Like that's just not going to be a thing. Now, there is, of course, maturation that needs to happen, but the point of the matter is that is a trump card, man. Like that is a way that can get you onto the field. If you know, hey, he's got some room to grow. We need to develop the technique side of everything. But we know for one thing, the kid is ultra talented and has incredible speed. Like that is something, to your point, that you need a little bit of injection into that room. Because I mean, Cam Hart might be a 4.4 something type of athlete at 6'2.5", and there might be another couple good athletes in the group as far as long speed is concerned. But you don't have a kid like this, right? Like you don't have a kid that may be a legitimate 4.3 type of athlete. Like he may be that guy when you're talking about his track times kind of translating to the testing numbers, right? So rare type of speed and athleticism for Micah Bell. And the best part of it is we haven't even seen close to the ceiling because he's asked to do so much at running back in high school where he averages almost 9 yards a carry. He doesn't play a ton of defense, right? But the defense that he does play is high quality, which is also very intriguing. But the fact of the matter is when this type of profile out of this state, Micah Bell's ceiling is almost limitless, in my opinion.
So you talked about the speed, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to put that into context. and we'll dive into the film and we'll dive into the game a little bit. But here's the commit story that we did on Micah Bell. I want to pull this up because when I did this, because look, you always want to say, boy, this guy's really fast, but just how fast. So I wanted to do some research here. So I would say probably the best track athlete that Notre Dame has signed in the last decade, if not 20 years, was Troy Pride, outdoor track. Chris Tyree was an indoor track guy. So it's a little harder to compare Micah Bell and Chris Tyree because I don't believe Micah Bell has done indoor. He's been an outdoor guy, and Chris Tyree was an indoor guy, I believe. But when you look at Braden or Troy Pride was an outstanding track guy and state champion in South Carolina in the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, and had some really outstanding times. And here, especially in the 100, he was even better in the 100. Troy Pride won the South Carolina state championship as a senior with a 10.55. That's moving, Ryan. That's a really good track time. Troy Pride then went to the NFL Combine and ran a 4.4 flat, and people were disappointed by it. Okay? Remember? I mean, they were just like, he only ran a 4.4 flat. People talk about maybe he sets a record and all this kind of stuff. Okay? So that was his track time as a senior. His personal best of 10.55 he did as a senior at the state championship match. Okay? Micah Bell, as a junior, has beaten that at least 5 times. He has a wind-aided 10.3. Take that away because I don't necessarily love putting those. But his official best time, which he ran at a state championship meet this past year, was a 10.41. At the event where he won the state there was another event that he ran where he did a 10.64 and I'm at 10.4, excuse me, a 10.46. I think I might have this backwards. No, he ran the 10.46 is what he ran in the state championship. Mm-hmm. The 10.41 came earlier in the year at another event. So he ran a 10.41 early in the year. He ran a 10.45 last year. He ran a 10.53 last year. And then he ran a 10.3, a wind-aided 10.3 as a sophomore, or as a sophomore. Yes, as a sophomore.
Crazy.
So he had that time of 10.46 in the state championship. I believe a state championship. It was the last event he ran. There was only 2 other runners that were below an 11.15. The next closest guy was a 10.62. The next closest guy after that was a 10.86.
And so, this is also in the state of Texas. Just
correct.
To put this in context. Yeah.
Correct. I mean, it is just an insane time. And so he went out and ran a 10.41, which is a blistering time. And so when I look at this kid, you look at it and you say, man, this guy's got something special. Well, and he's not just a sprinter, like straight line sprinter. He also won a championship as a junior in the 200-meter dash, and he ran a 20.89. Now, again, Troy Pride won the South Carolina 200-meter state championship. Troy Pride's best time was a 21.28. Braden Lindsay was a state champion in the state of Oregon 2 years in a row and was also considered a really good track guy who's considered a 4.4 guy. His personal best in the 200-meter dash was 21.34. He won the state championship with a 21.49, but his personal best time was 21.34. And Micah Bell smoked that at 20.89. Yes. I just want, and again, Troy Pride ran a 4.4 flat at the NFL scouting combine. And so when you put those numbers into context of other guys that we know to be elite athletes and to be elite speed guys, it really puts it into, I mean, it really shows you something. It really kind of is like, wow, this guy's got something special. And, there are some things that we can maybe compare him to, like a Chris Tyree, for example. The one thing Chris Tyree did is he did a long jump, and his best long jump was 21.11, which is pretty good, right?
Yeah, 21.11 is good, yeah.
Right. Micah Bell this past year had a personal best of 24.5.
Which is a very good one. Yep. Yes. 24.5 is very good.
Also won the championship at that same event where he won the 100 and 200.
So not only is that, and why does that matter, right? Because you're talking about the 100 speed, 200 speed. That's the long speed, obviously, but the long jump is also short area explosiveness.
Yes.
Like there is a lot of pop in that lower half to just kind of illustrate why that matters.
He finished at the event in question. He finished first in the 100-meter dash, first in the 200-meter dash. He had over a 24-foot long jump. Mm-hmm. At the same event, he finished second with an over 45-foot triple jump. And they also, along with his brother, won the 100-meter 4x100 relay.
Mm-hmm. And
he also competed in the 4x400 relay. That's a lot of events for one day. And he had phenomenal times at all of them. You know, so this kid has got elite speed. Now, here's the key though, Ryan. That's fine. The track coach is probably going to be excited to maybe get this kid on their board. We have seen track guys that can't play football.
Sure.
That's the thing is, this is all great and the speed is great, but does that speed translate to the football field? The answer is yes.
Oh, yes.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing.
Yeah. I mean, literally, before we even knew the track times, I remember when we both watched it and we were kind of just texting back and forth. We're like, oh, that guy can move a little bit, man. Like that's some speed, you know? And then you look into for me, it's all about verification, right? I saw that speed on film. I'm like, what? And then I saw the track times. I'm like, that makes sense. That makes complete sense that he's a great track runner because he is incredibly fast on a football field. There's a huge difference, huge indication because like you're saying, there's some guys that can run incredible times in the 100-meter, but then they don't play fast, right? Like it just doesn't translate. This translates to the football field. You'll see him as a running back, and when we get to the film, the minute the kid breaks into the open, it's gone. He's out. There's no chance. No chance.
And it's easy.
Yes.
Like that's the thing is we talked about this the other day. You don't just want a guy that's fast. You want a guy that's effortless with his speed. And that's the thing about him and that's the thing about Chris Tyree. There's times where Chris Tyree doesn't necessarily look like he's moving that fast. And then you kind of watch him pull away from people and like, oh, he actually is moving that fast. But he's a track guy, so he's smooth. He's fluid. He's efficient. He's not like, straining kind of thing. And Micah certainly has that. I mean, he certainly brings that to the table. It's a very effortless speed. So it doesn't even look like there's one where he gets the corner and you're like, okay, there's no way he's going to get, and then goes, right? And you see that. It's like, oh, that guy might have an angle on him running up the middle. And you're like, nope, he's gone. So that's obviously a big part of the class impact is getting the speed, improving the speed. Yep. Then the final piece too is, look, we talked about this. Notre Dame really, really, really wanted to make Texas a bigger priority in this recruiting class. And you've now gotten a third kid from the state of Texas. And this is a big one because Houston is a little different area. It's a little tougher to get kids out of Houston to Notre Dame. It just is. It has been. So this is not only a third kid from Texas, but you got a kid from Houston. And Ryan, I mean, we can't say enough. And they're not done yet. They're going to try to get at least one more guy from Texas when you talk about Jaden Greathouse. Mm-hmm. But to be able to, in your first shot at trying to go down there, to get 3 players from Texas, but the bigger thing is you got 3 athletes. You didn't get a linebacker, defensive lineman, offensive tackle. You got 3 elite skill players. Mm-hmm. And we could argue, I mean, honestly, it's not even an argument. It's just a proven fact. Braylon James is the slowest of the group. You think about that.
4.47.
He ran a 4.47. Peyton Bowen ran a 4.38 at Notre Dame's combine. Sure. That their camp last year. That's one of the reasons they loved him so much. Ran a 4.38. Then they made him run it again, and he ran a 4.41. He's not as fast as Micah Bell.
No.
And he's faster. And that's the thing. Braylon James at a 4.47. Now, Braden's also the biggest of the 3. But at a 4.47, Braylon James is the slower of these 3 guys. I mean, that is the biggest thing for me that is huge for Notre Dame to be able to go down to Texas and get elite skill players. That is a huge check mark when you talk about the impact on this class.
You mean you can get really good players out of the state of Texas? Who would have thought that would ever happen, right? I mean,
if you try.
Right, exactly. I mean, right, because I've mentioned this before, the piece I did about Notre Dame's recruiting in Texas. 5 previous cycles before Marcus Freeman, they had gotten 3 recruits that have come from the state of Texas in 5 years. This is their 3rd recruit in this class, right? And that is a huge number. And like you're saying, Brian, we know that typically speaking anyway, I mean, they just got Charles Jagasaw, for instance, right? You can usually get really good offensive linemen out of the north. That's usually not a problem. we all know, though, where the skill guys typically come from. Florida, Texas, we get that, right? And Notre Dame was able to go down here in the state of Texas, in Houston, like you said, which is a place that isn't the easiest place to recruit out of if you're Notre Dame. And they go down and they get not a really fast player, not just a really good football player in general, but one of the best athletes in the 2023 class. Like, make no mistake about it. We're not talking about one of the best athletes, just a cornerback. I would put Micah Bell athletically up against just about anyone. He has incredible upside. So it was imperative to get into Texas. It was imperative to get some athleticism to this degree. And Notre Dame got to check both those boxes all in a very high priority state now for them moving forward.
Notre Dame. So when you look at the class impact, Ryan, this is a very, very important thing for Notre Dame to be able to get a kid like Micah Bell, because to be able to check impact, numbers, Texas, speed. I mean, there's literally not a box that this kid doesn't check when you talk about what Notre Dame is looking for in the 2023 class.
And they're starting the pipeline. I mean, to go back to our Texas conversation, right? They have put people on notice in the state of Texas now, in programs that you typically do well in the state of Texas. They're now like, oh, Notre Dame is a threat here. And I think the interest from the recruit side was a lot higher than maybe the previous staff had knowledge of, right? And I think we're seeing that obviously here with this now 3 commits in one class. I mean, we might get to 4